Hang on. There I am. Hi. Hello. Oh my god, I haven't done a live show in so long, so hi, I might be a little awkward at this, but hello everybody. Welcome to the House of Leaves live show for the House of Leaves read-along, hosted by me. My name is Jackie if you're brand new to the channel. I am primarily a fantasy and science fiction booktuber, but I do talk about other genres here as well, including horror and thrillers and contemporary, all that kind of stuff. So be sure to subscribe if you are new. And yeah, okay, so this is something that I am so excited to be here to talk to you guys about. So if again you're new, welcome of course. We here on the channel hosted a well, 3-month long read along for House of Leaves by Mark Z. Bluesky. It ran from October to December, and I honestly read the book throughout the 3 months that it technically ran for, but I legitimately finished this last night. So, I was very dumb in my decision to read this gigantic book at this time of year or during the holiday season, knowing how my work schedule can be. So that is 100% on me. But hey, we made it. We finished the book. I'm excited to dive into my thoughts. So if you guys didn't join on the read along, that's fine. If you're here just for a good time to hear some thoughts on House of Leaves, welcome. I'm happy you're here. Yeah, this is going to be split up into spoilers and non-spoilers, so there will be a spoiler-free section. And then I'm not sure how long that's going to last for, honestly. Then we'll dive into the more spoiler-y thoughts. If you guys want to see my entire reading process of reading House Leaves, I did vlog 3 vlogs throughout the past couple of months, and I will link them in the description box below if you are interested in watching my whole process of this. All right. I'm a little bit nervous to do this, guys, because I have so many thoughts and I can't wait to dive in. So I'm going to give you guys a quick synopsis if you, in case, have never heard of this book before. It is technically adult horror. And I say technically because it is horror. There is horror elements to this, but it's also a play on like academic novels, the way it is written with, I'm trying not to spoil anything, the footnotes and everything and other stuff that's included is kind of a play on like academic textbooks. And we are mainly following a main storyline. We're following this the Davidson family who moves into this house, and the house is seemingly bigger on the inside than the outside. And strange things start happening. I'm not going to give too much away because it's kind of hard to explain. Then there is, again, storyline in the footnotes. We have the editorial footnotes by a guy named Zampano, who is going back and editing the Davidson record. And then we have another set of footnotes by a guy named Johnny, who is also commentating on Zampano's footnotes and on the Davidson record itself. So that is that. Yeah, that is what you really need to know going in. I am going to double check to make sure chat is up and running. Hello to anybody who is just joining. I'm just double checking everything. And then we'll dive into my full thoughts. So give me 1 second. It's been a while since I've done this, guys. So, okay, chat is up and running. Okay. So now we're going to dive into my thoughts. Before we dive really deep in, I'm going to just give you like a brief overview of what I thought of the book. And let me know, again, I'm going completely off topic, my bad, if you guys can hear me okay during the live show. Let me know in the chat if you guys can't hear me. If you can, cool. All right. So I finished reading this last night. It took me that long. It's not the book's fault. It's the me thing. Again, my schedule is kind of unpredictable these days with work. So like I said, I read this in a very non-traditional way. I did not read it straight through. I took multiple breaks throughout, and I kind of took my time with it. And I think that's why it took me so long to read. And that's not a bad thing. So when I started this in October, I started it reading it the traditional way, where you read the main storyline, read Johnny's introduction and everything, and then you would go along with the story, you would read the footnotes, they take you somewhere else in the book, you have to go back and forth, back and forth. So I started reading that way. Not too far into the book, I honestly started getting confused, because it was taking me way out of the story and the horror that I knew would come along with it. So I decided to start back at the beginning after I read Johnny's introduction, which I think you should read no matter which way you read this. And I read just the Davidson record. I skipped all of the footnotes. Now, this is something I did learn, and I'm going to give a lot of credit to Books and Lala, who I will link in the description box below. She gave me, number one, the inspiration to do this read along in the first place, and number two, um, she gave me the inspiration to do the reading method I did. So that is why I switched it up. So once I switched the things up, I found myself going through it a lot quicker. And I honestly flew through after the 150 page mark, I found myself flying through the Davidson record. It did take me the entire month of October to do, and that's fine. And before I knew it, I was done. I think I finished my first read through of the book the second to last week of October, and then I started my second pass. So that is that. Once I finished that pass, I went back, started the whole thing over again, and read just the editorial footnotes. So Zampano's footnotes, the editorial ones. And that is what took me the longest, only because I was reading it during the holiday season. And they didn't take away from the storyline. Again, I found myself going through them very, very quickly, a lot quicker than I thought I would. And I honestly got freaked out quite a bit once I understood what was happening in the story. Once I figured out, oh, this is what's going on, and I wasn't as confused as I had been the first time around, I really started getting quite creeped out, honestly. And then that finished up. I finished that up right before the new year, and then I started this third pass and my third and final read through. And that was where I read Johnny's story and how that connects with the Davidson record. And oh man, that again didn't take me the longest, but it felt like it took forever because I'm going to dive more into this in a second. I didn't like Johnny. I found him really annoying. I didn't like his story until the very end. So that is the way I read it. Everybody reads it a little bit differently. So that is just how I did it. Any way you read it, and I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on how you read it down below. So that is that. Anywho, I'm just checking one more thing and then I will dive back into where am I? There we go. Okay, that's where I am. Okay, that I was just checking one more thing. Sorry, guys. um, so now we're going to dive. Oops. Oh my gosh, I'm a hot mess. Okay, we're gonna leave that be. All right. Sorry, guys. I haven't done this in a while. Can you tell? All right. Let's dive into my non-spoilery thoughts on House of Leaves. So, okay. I'm going to start off with the Davidson record. I thoroughly, thoroughly enjoyed the Davidson record itself. I am still very, very, very new to the horror genre. So I have not read, besides Stephen King, a lot of outside horror. Um, it is just something that never appealed to me until recently, and that's not a bad thing. It was just never for me. And then I picked this up because it had been on my TBR for so long. I had had this on my TBR for probably well over a decade, since before I joined BookTube, before I became a book blogger, anything like that, because I heard so much about it and it always sounded really interesting. So when I started the Navency record, I was very invested in the family story right away. I thought they were really interesting. I really liked getting to know Navy and Karen. Karen, I grew to really like as a character in the end. I thought her plotline was really interesting. And I quickly also grew invested in the investigation side of things because I love paranormal investigation shows, that kind of thing, and this is almost like watching one of those in my opinion. And I also I'm gonna dive more into this later. I would love to see a movie version of this because, again, it feels like we're watching, like, a paranormal investigation show, like a found footage Blair Witch Project kinda situation. And, the Davidson family's storyline just got really, really interesting as time went on, and I flew through the story. I laughed, I cried, I had my jaw literally on the floor at certain points, especially towards the end. I couldn't put the book down once I was just reading the Davidson record. Now, with the Davidson record in the footnotes, I think the footnotes definitely took away from the horror just a tiny bit because I was, you know, reading the middle of a very intense action scene, and all of a sudden I had to switch to a footnote and it'd be some like, article or interview from after the fact. And I feel like I was taken away from the horror elements that I was so looking forward to. I'm gonna put this book down. It's very heavy. Anywho, but once I kinda got a grasp on the footnotes, it didn't bother me as much, especially once we kinda started wrapping things up in just the record itself. It it still scared me with the footnotes, and the footnotes definitely got more intense and more important as time went on, and I'm hoping I'm making sense when I'm talking about this, guys, so just bear with me. Uh, but, they definitely took away from the story a little bit and brought my rating down for a little bit there at certain points. For most part, this book stayed at like a 4 star throughout the entire thing. And then I'll talk about my final rating at the end, but it definitely changed once I finished the actual book. And yeah, the footnotes again kind of brought it down in rating. And then once everything started wrapping up, it changed it quite a bit. Now talking about Johnny's story. Johnny, I could not stand. I did not like him, like I mentioned earlier. I thought he was annoying. I just didn't understand the purpose of his story for 99% of the book. I was like, "Is this important to the story? What the hell is going on? Why am I reading this? Why are there pages and pages of just this random guy talking about his life? Like, what does this have to do with the Nathan regard? With Zapato's story? I do not get it." And I still feel like that after I have finished the Nathan record, or after I finish House of Leaves, I should say. I can't stand him. I really cannot stand Johnny. Like, he drove me absolutely insane. However, I do now, after finishing the book, understand why he was in there. And now everything makes sense, and this is going to be spoilers, so I'm not gonna dive into why here right now. Um, but does it change the fact that I didn't like Johnny? No, and I think that's the consensus for a lot of people who read House of Leaves, even if they, like, love it as much as I do. Um, they don't like Johnny. It's and it's fair to assume why, because he's annoying, he takes a lot out. Again, I don't think it was the editorial footnotes that distracted me from the horror that was going on in the record, it was Johnny's footnotes because they were interspersed everywhere, and I'm like, "I'm trying to read this horrifying scene in this house," and all of a sudden Johnny's like, "Hey, here I am, woohoo." I'm like, "Oh, dear God." But it is what it is. So, I am now going to switch over to the spoiler section because I have a lot more thoughts that are going to spoil the plot of the book. So, if you guys do not want to be spoiled for the Davidson record, I'm going to have you click away for now, and I'm going to come back towards the end. So, we'll see about 20 minutes or so. But to wrap up, if in case you're going to leave and not come back for the end, I'm going to just give my final thoughts here for you. I loved the book in the end, I really did. I again, despite my ever-changing thoughts throughout the whole thing, I loved it. The ending kind of blew my mind, didn't expect what happened, and I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, and it ended up being in my new top 10 favorite books of all time. So, that is going to be the end of the spoiler-free section. If you guys are just here for non-spoilers, that is my full thoughts. Like I said, if you want to hear more, they're going to be in the vlogs that are going to be linked down below in the description box, and you guys can check out my thoughts there. But we are going to split over to spoilers, so let's chat about those right now. After I have a sip of my drink. Okay. Spoilers. Now, I feel like I did talk quite a bit about my thoughts on the Davidson record and the non-spoiler free section. So, okay. Like I said, love the Davidson record. It again felt like found footage. I personally feel like this is a book a lot about isolation. That I feel like is the main theme of the book, and being away from family and how isolation can change you. And we definitely saw that. My favorite part of the book for me was the Holloway tape, which again I feel like is a lot of people's favorite part of the book. And I really, really love that section. And once the gun scene started coming out, I was like, "What the hell is going on?" It was like, "Oh my gosh, now we got weapons, like, what is going on?" But it was, like, one action scene after another after that, and then obviously with Holloway's suicide, like, that was very sad to watch, very sad to read, um, and it felt like I was slipping into madness, and I was like, I know I'm supposed to be confused, that I knew going in, but it left me with more questions, especially on my first pass through than it did answers, which is fine. And again, the editorial footnotes did help quite a bit, understanding what's going on in this maze of the book, which I know is mentioned quite a bit, is one of the words slash labyrinth that's used most often in this book. I still have quite a few questions about the Minotaur aspect, which I know from mythology is usually what's found at the center of a maze. But I was like, how does this apply to the House of Leaves? How does this apply to the Davidson record? Because a lot of what we see is off page. We only see darkness take over. We see the house itself act upon the family, but what does the Minotaur of mythology have to do with this if we never see an actual monster? I'm going to reread this book in the future. I'm going to preface that by saying so I could come back to this live show and understand it better once I do a reread. But that is one question I left still wondering, and maybe I didn't read too much into it. But it's something I wondered about throughout the entire book. Excuse me. uh, but the horror elements of what this family was going through, like, legitimately kept me on edge. That second read through, I remember just being on the edge of my seat the entire time, because I knew what was coming. I knew it was gonna happen, with number one, Hallway's suicide, number two, Tom's death, and number three, what happens to Davison at the end. I knew it was coming. It didn't mean I wasn't on the edge of my seat regardless, and the footnotes just added to my not so much anticipation, but almost like primal fear that what was gonna happen is going to happen. And it just I don't know, it added to my enjoyment of it, I feel like I said, I was really enjoying the book as it is before the footnotes came into play, and I just really enjoyed it as the editorial footnotes started coming more and more into play. Just really, really enjoyed it. And then once I read those first two passes and I read the perspective of Johnny, this is where my enjoyment started to go down just a little bit. Like, once I finished my first two passes of House of Leaves, I was convinced this is gonna be a five-star read. I was planning on throwing it in the best books of 2024 video. I was like, "This is going to be my favorite book of the year, yada, yada, yada," and then I got into Johnny's perspective. Now, I'm gonna repeat this throughout the rest of the live show. I do not like Johnny. He is a sex addict. His monologues are annoying and long and took away from everything. Now, I was able to put up with it, and, I was, like, determined to finish the book no matter how annoying Johnny was, but it drove me insane to know, like, "Oh, shit, I have a very, very long Johnny Truant long footnote coming up. It's gonna take me 3 pages, 4 pages to read just this one footnote." I was like, "Great." I really have lingering questions about Johnny's story, and again, I think once I do a reread of this book, my questions probably will be answered, and maybe who knows, I might do another read along in the future of this book, because I have so many thoughts that, like, only an hour-long live show can answer. Just Johnny, oh my god. He I like some elements of his story, I won't write him off for good. He drove me nuts. I didn't understand the point of, including his, love life in there, his sex scenes. Not that that turns me off, I don't usually care, but there was just so much of it in this book, guys, like, I was like, "Why do we need, like, constant pages of sex scenes? Like, is this necessary to move the plot forward?" And not that I didn't like, the love interest, I don't really care either way. I was like, there is no point to what is going on with the Davidson family. I was like, "Why do we need to learn about this random guy's sex life?" Like, I don't get it. And then, like, Lude, is that his name? I think that's his name, I think that's how you say it, at least. I was like, "Oh, he seems like an interesting side character. Where is more of his perspective?" That might have been interesting to see his perspective on Johnny also kind of slipping into this mess as number one, Davidson is, number two, we are as readers. Because I feel like Johnny's perspective was just thrown in there to confuse us even further. And I think that's 100% right. It's my personal opinion. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts. I would love to see another outside perspective. We obviously got the mother's perspective, Johnny's mother, in the letters that were included in the appendices. But I was like, I want another perspective. You know what I mean, guys? I hope I'm making sense. And, you know, Johnny's obviously going through shit, obviously. And, this his finding of Zampano's record, screws his whole light up, basically. And I wanted to see, again, I'm gonna reiterate this so many times. I want to see another perspective of what it's like to see your friend, your family go through this. Like, what's Johnny like other than what he's including in his footnotes? I want to know more. As time grew on, until the very last, like 50 or so pages of the book, my opinion of Johnny didn't really change. Once I stopped at a certain point, and I want to say it was 50 or so pages left. Excuse me. It changed a little bit for me on Johnny. Because the minute he said, "Lude is dead," I was like, "What the hell? What happened?" That threw me for a curveball. I did not expect that whatsoever. And he's just like, "Oh, I'm gonna open up this footnote with us after we just finish Zampano, or not Zampano, Davidson's death in the house." I was like, "Oh, okay. Did not see that coming." And then we kind of enter on this more interesting monologue of seeing his life after his friend's death. I'm like, okay, this is kind of what I was looking more for the rest of the time I was reading House of Leaves. We see him clean his act up. He changes his life. He travels around the country. This is what I would have liked to see more of, and the footnotes in the main storyline. I think that would have made me appreciate Johnny even more. And then to realize when he gets to Arizona that he has been commenting on the Davidson record without even knowing it, again, threw me for a complete loop. I was like, well, it all makes sense to me now, but like, did not expect that Johnny would actually mention that in the footnote. I was like, it took me, I included in the vlog, I have a time lapse of me reacting to it, but I don't think it accurately captures my honest reaction to, you know, reading that. I was like, "Oh, he's now just realizing it." Like, holy cow, guys. Oh my gosh. That literally took me by complete shock. I will say that. I did not really expect it at all. And then, we finish up his storyline, coming to the realization he's been kind of commenting on this without even knowing it as its entire 700-page book goes along. And then we get back to Karen's perspective. Again, honestly, one of my favorite characters in the entire book was Karen. I wish we had gotten more of her from her perspective because we only got really slices of it throughout the book. I wish we gotten more. And, she's come to the conclusion, Davidson's dead, there's no going back, yada yada. And then she goes into the hallway. I was like, why didn't I not see that coming? I know I'm bad at calling plot twists, but man, I did not actually expect her to go into the hallway and go looking for Davidson. Like, holy, holy, holy cow. And then to read later on that Davidson is alive, like, they both made it out of that house alive and he's fine. It was like, holy cow. And then they go on to live like a normal life afterwards. I was like, again, my reaction in the vlogs really did not capture it well enough. My jaw was like down to the floor. Like, holy cow. I did not expect that. And that I think is what boosted it back up to a 5-star read for me, was that whole concluding 50 pages or so. I was like, "Oh my gosh." I really did not expect that to happen, and I'm not sure why I didn't call it earlier, but it, like, left me speechless. I remember it was, like, 12:30 in the morning when I finished it, and I just sat in my chair, like, "Here, this is how I was last night." I was like, "What did I just what did I just read?" Like, oh my god. Like, I couldn't believe it, and again, that is what really boosted it back up to a 5-star read for me. Now, that is, like, my complete thoughts on the story itself. If I had to pick a favorite section, I know I mentioned the hallway tape earlier. I think that still holds true. That is definitely one of my favorite sections. I would say also those last 50 pages or so are my favorite because that's what really boosted back up to a 5-star read for me and was now considered, like, a favorite book of all time. I really enjoyed those. Both of those sections, I would say, is, like, what really made it for me, and I'm not having any regrets about reading this book. I'm so glad I finally finished it, and it didn't take me, like, a year to read in its entirety. Um, what else do I have to mention? I wanna talk about the appendices because there was so much included in those 3 appendices. I was like, "Oh," we get more background information on Johnny. We get more historical context that's important to the story as a whole, which I thought was really interesting, and I'm not one for history. What else do we get? We got pictures and drawings of the house, of what exactly Holloway and his crew was seeing, what Davidson was seeing when he went down the first couple of times. I was like, "Oh, this this is a lot more interesting than I ever thought." And I feel like if I had to pick a favorite part of the appendices, it might have been, I really liked the drawings, because it gave me more of an idea of what we were supposed to see. Like, say, if this was a movie, like an actual movie, this is what we'd be seeing. I also really liked oh gosh, what were they called? Hold on, guys. The letter from Johnny's mother to him was, like, also one that left me in tears, honestly. That made me cry quite a bit. Hold on. The poems were good. Oh my god, there's so much information in this book, guys. It might take me a second to follow. Hang on. The exhibits. That part I really liked as well because, we keep hearing about this Reston interview and we have to kind of flip back to those and I was like, "Oh, it's not in here whatsoever." Um, yeah, those were my favorite parts. I feel like I'm still processing my thoughts on this book and it's gonna take me a while and I just had such a fun time with it. I think if I hadn't done this read along and if I had just read it just by myself on my own, I don't know if I would have enjoyed it as much. I think the process of reading it with you guys, number 1, and number 2, doing a 3-part series of vlogs was really fun. It kept me motivated to keep reading and not stop, even when my brain wanted to play games and stuff. I was like, "No, I have to finish the book at some point this century." So, I think the reading experience was really, really fun, and I think, again, that's what really boosted it to, like, a top 5, top 10 favorite books of all time. It's just the experience in and of itself. Now, would I recommend this book to everyone? Absolutely not. In fact, I will mention that I am not one for multimedia format books. I have read only, I think, one other multimedia book that had like other interviews and other files just like this. That was Illuminate. I hated it. That put me into like a 13-month uh reading slump. So for me to like a book that is kind of similar to that in the aspects of multimedia, enjoy it and like consider it a favorite book of all time is saying a lot. Um, yeah, it really is saying a lot. But I think it was the horror elements of it that made me really love it. And I would love more recommendations on like books like this that, aren't too heavy on the multimedia, but they're still included. Even if they have an audiobook, I think I'd really like that too. That is one thing I do wish that House of Leaves had would have been an audiobook, but I know that would have been really hard to do, and credit to anybody in that field of work who could do audiobooks like that because I could never do it. Um, I think that's gonna be it. I think that's gonna be it for the live show, guys. I know it's a rather quick explanation of my thoughts on House of Leaves, but you know, I had a lot of fun doing it. I'll talk more about my thoughts in future videos, vlogs, end of the year wrap up videos. I have so many thoughts that like this is only an hour long live show that I could, talk more and more about this for probably 6 hours. We were here all night. So I'm gonna wrap it up here, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the live show. If you did, be sure to give a big thumbs up and subscribe if you are new to the channel or if you have not subscribed yet. What are you doing? Make sure you subscribe for future book content just like this. Let me know in the comments down below if you guys have read House of Leaves, what your thoughts are. Anything like that, I would love to know. And as always, all my social media links, along with the links to the vlogs, will be linked down below for you guys to check out if you like to follow me on any of those or watch the whole reading process for yourself. With all being said, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day. I'll see you guys soon for another bookish video. Thanks for watching, everybody. Bye.